Alright, welcome back to the channel everyone. It's another lucky day for me as I'm getting to test ride a very special bike. This bike. So this is the Santa Cruz Heckler SL. It's their super light e-bike and features the Fazua drive system. It is essentially an electrified Bronson, full carbon frame, 160mm of fork travel, 150mm of rear travel, and it's a mullet setup. So that's a 29er front wheel and a 27.5 at the rear. This particular model is a custom build. It belongs to Mitch at Cycler Studio, so shout out to Mitch for letting me go and take it out for a ride. So it's got 36s up front, Axis drivetrain and dropper posts. It's actually my first time riding Axis, so it's a bit of a learning curve already, and Saint brakes. It's also my first time riding the Fazua motor. The only other lightweight e-bike I've ridden is the Specialized Levo SL, and that was some time ago, but I have spent a bit of time on full power e-bikes, so this will be an interesting comparison. If you're interested in picking up one of these and you're in the area, I strongly recommend talking to Mitch down at Cycler Studio. He is my local bike shop. He stocks a big range of bikes and he is a Santa Cruz dealer. The plan today is to take it around Loftus and some of the nearby trails. Bikes in this category are kind of the do-all bike, so I'm hoping that it'll be fun on the flatter trails but also capable on the gnarly trails. Okay, so the Fazua, you push the ring up and it turns on. That's off, eco, regular, and boost. And the amount of battery is shown by the number of lights there. People say this plastic ring feels kind of flimsy. Doesn't feel quality, but it's not as cheap feeling as I thought it might be. All right, let's get climbing. Definitely notice the shorter wheelbase compared to the bikes I normally ride, but I'll just have to keep my body weight a little bit more centered. Might be a bit obvious to say an e-bike climbs well, but got up there pretty good, and the VPP suspension climbing feels like a VPP suspension, and by that I mean it has good support and pretty good traction. You know, normally I duck out to the road and climb that, but when you got a motor, you just smash out the tech climbs. Noise from the motor is about normal. I'd say it's a little bit quieter than the Shimano. Doesn't have that rattle that they've got, but I can still tell it's there. It's pretty high-pitched whine. I'm not sure if the camera would be picking that up properly. So this would be my first time riding a mullet bike. A mullet is a 29er up front and a 27.5 in the rear. And they do that particularly on e-bikes. It seems to be almost a de facto standard now, because the motor takes up room at the BB, so that tends to make the chain stays longer. And then the extra weight of the motor and battery means that e-bikes are a bit less flickable. That's another reason to put a smaller rear wheel at the back, keep that playfulness in the bike. The benefit of a 29er rear wheel is better rollover. It's less likely to get hung up on things, trail chatter and whatnot. So I'll be watching out for that both on the climbs and on the descents. Cool, let's take on this little ticky trail. Having to adjust my style a little bit to be more over the front to stop the front from washing, so I'm not sure if that's a setup thing or a mullet thing, or just because I'm used to the bigger size. I can't say I'm really noticing any hang up from that smaller rear wheel. If I am, it's very slight. One thing I do like about the mullet is the super low BB really lets you lean it into corners. I can see why so many fun focus bikes go for a mixed wheel. It's probably my favorite thing about e-bikes is how quickly you can get from one area to another. How is it described to me? It's like TV without the ads. Kind of my first impression might be that it's a great bike if you're someone that has ridden a fair bit, maybe getting a bit older, maybe you don't have time because you've got kids or work's really busy or something like that to keep your fitness up. You still want to stay somewhat fit and be able to keep up with maybe some fitter mates on their pedal bikes. That seems like a really sweet spot for this because it is just a very easy bike to kind of just get on and have a good time, and the power delivery is very natural. It doesn't have the outright torque of the Bosch. The Bosch you pretty much don't have to change gears, and then it doesn't need that super high cadence of the Shimano. It just feels like a bike to me. It feels like a bike with 50% less effort. Super easy to pick up over stuff. I think that's a combination of the lightweight, the mullet rear wheel, and just that sort of supportive VPP suspension. Gives you plenty to preload, and then, yeah, pretty lively when you bounce off it. Cool, I'm gonna hit some enduro tracks now. I'm gonna bump it down to not the top power mode. I've already lost 1 bar of battery. That's pretty good actually. And I've heard these motors are pretty easy on their battery actually. So that's probably a plus if you're looking at an SL. Definitely seems to be the most popular motor for SLs. Probably also not send it too hard off the double drop that's coming up. Because I don't know if the suspension's going to bottom out very hard, or oh yeah, don't know if it's the end or it's just a fair bit of ramp there. Wow. Whoa. Ah, see. I nearly washed the front then, and it pushed me offline, just bottom the fork. Right, let's go up to boost for this. Surely this is why you buy an e-bike. This hill's normally a bit of a slog, and I'll be in my easiest gear usually. Oh, might be someone on an analog up there. Usually it's the e-bikers smugly riding past me, but the shoe will be on the other foot. There you go. Oh, that rut's getting deeper and deeper. Oh. Okay, so final thoughts on the Heckler SL after taking on a few different trails with it. And overall, I was really pleased with the bike. Typical Santa Cruz, frame is very high quality, got a really nice ride feel, and that VPP suspension feels as good as ever, even with that little DPS shock, which I think they really punch above their weight. I was also impressed by the Fazua Ride 60 system, which it has got some mixed reviews out there. It was very natural with the power, and it just felt like a bike. The amount of assistance is a fair bit lower than a full power, so there is that to think about. But for most trail riding, I found it to be a really good amount of assistance, and boost was actually probably more than I would want on most trails. On really steep climbs, then I probably would have liked more power than the boost mode, but just getting up the road climbs around here and probably some of the fire roads, I think it would be absolutely fine. I was also impressed that I only used a bar of battery, or maybe two, and I wasn't going easy on the battery at all. Plus, I'm, as I mentioned, around 90 kilos. Probably my biggest reservation about this bike is it sits in this awkward travel bracket between kind of the best trail bike, which I think is around a kind of 140mm, and the best enduro bike, which is more like a 170 fork and probably bigger stanchions. So it's a good one bike, and it takes up that middle space pretty nicely. But I generally find my riding is either on one end or the other. So I might be going out for a fitness pedal, and that's when a trail bike is better, or I might be trying to hit some gnarly stuff, and that's where I want as much bike as possible. Given that it's got a motor, I would probably lean towards wanting to ride the more gnarly stuff. So if I owned this bike, I would be looking to beef it up. For me, the jury's also out on the mullet setup. I would need a bit more time on it, and I would need to do a like-for-like comparison with a bike that is my size. It felt a little bit off to me, that low bottom bracket and the difference in drop between the front and rear axle. It just made me feel a bit off the back of the bike and a bit choppered out. I think the big question is, like, would I buy this bike, and who should buy this bike? And for me, you know, I think my ideal e-bike would be something like the Bullet, which is the 170. It's basically a Nomad that's electrified. But the downside of that bike is it's got the Shimano motor, which I'm not a massive fan of. It's a bit noisy, and it's not as natural feeling as either this or the Bosch motor. And then it's quite heavy, so they come in at sort of 25 kilos-ish. I think you can get them down to about 23. But my ideal bike would be something a little bit lighter than that, similar amount of battery, same travel bracket, and a more natural feeling motor. I think this bike's for you if you maybe don't need the full power e-bike. So maybe you're just someone who can't get out as much as you used to be able to, or you're getting a little bit older, but you're not old enough to really justify sort of slobbing it around on a full power e-bike, and you still want to get a workout. And this bikes in this travel bracket sort of suit your trails, your riding style. I think it's a really great choice for that, because it does have a very natural, normal bike feel. It doesn't feel like an e-bike, except when you put your feet on the pedals, and that gives you a good amount of power assistance. So that's just a first impression. I'm probably not going to get too many more rides on this bike, because I think Mitch is planning to sell it and to size down. Thanks to Mitch. Thanks to you for watching. See you at the next one. Don't forget to leave a like before you head off.